I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. My name is Laura Franke. I am the Sustainable Buildings Coordinator at HDC, Housing Development Consortium of Seattle-King County. And this is our Learn at Lunch series that is going to be devoted to decarbonization and other sustainability issues. And this is the first of our series. Today we're going to be talking with folks from Stillwater, City of Seattle, and Seattle City Light to share with us important information about the Building Emission Performance Standard and available tools to accommodate your early participation as property owners and portfolio managers. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sada, who will introduce the panel, and we'll go ahead and get started. Sada?
Great. Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Sada Negaline. I am the program manager with Stillwater Energy, supporting the Building Emissions Navigator and the Seattle City Light Strategic Energy Management Program. So we'll be talking about both of those programs today. I'm also joined by my colleague, Tara. She's here for support to answer questions. And in a moment, I'm going to let Amy and Graham introduce themselves. But before we do that, we just kind of want to ground in what we're going to cover today. So after a brief welcome and introductions from us, we're going to want to hear a little bit about you all and your roles at your organizations and buildings. We will provide an overview of the Seattle Building Emissions Performance Standard. We'll talk about the Seattle Decarbonization Grant, which is a great grant opportunity that you all should know about. We'll also provide an overview of the Building Emissions Navigator coaching program and introduce the Seattle City Light new multifamily SEM Strategic Energy Management program. We will have time for questions, but we invite you to put your questions in the chat as we go along here. We'll answer your questions as we have time, and we'll definitely have time at the end to answer your questions. So with that, I'll turn things over to Amy first to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Amy Fowler with the Office of Sustainability and Environment with the City of Seattle. I'm a strategic advisor, and I work on programs that help building owners comply with the new Building Emissions Performance Standard, as well as the Washington State Clean Buildings Performance Standard. And I'm running the new Building Decarbonization Grant that we'll talk about in a moment. Thanks.
And Graham.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm Graham Goodman. I'm a senior program manager at Seattle City Light. Along with supporting the Building Emission Navigator program, I manage our industrial strategic energy management program, which is in the market today. And I also lead the design effort for our commercial and multifamily strategic energy management programs, which will be market ready by the end of this year for commercial and early next year for multifamily. And I look forward to telling you guys more about that later in this presentation. Back to you, Sada. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll share a little bit more about Stillwater Energy. So we have been the program implementer for the Seattle Building Emissions Navigator since its inception 3 years ago. We are also the program manager, program implementer for the City Light SEM program. SEM is probably one of the things that we are best known for. Strategic energy management takes a holistic approach to energy management, so looking at both the technical and organizational side of energy management best practices, and we bring that lens to compliance support. So through the Navigator program and our support of buildings on their compliance journey, we talk about the technical and the organizational elements needed to comply with both the city performance standard and the state building performance standard. So you'll hear more about the program specifically in a little while. But first, and typically we have a mentee. Well, now we have a few more people, but I think if you all don't mind, I might just put you on the spot and ask you to introduce yourself, because the first mentee is really just to introduce yourself. So if we don't mind just going round robin, and if you would share your name, organization, and if you have a building, the rough square footage of that building. And Kelly, I'm going to call you out first.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Kelly Rinkich with O'Brien 360. I'm on the commercial new construction team, but we do have a building performance team and a residential team that supports clients with affordable and multifamily housing. And I've been trying to dip my toes into it. And sorry, my mic was up there. And I do have some questions because I did just try to help with some benchmarking and have really dug into to BEPS, and this is just perfect timing. So thank you.
Great, welcome. Emily, do you mind sharing your name, role, building or organization you're with, and rough square footage?
Yeah, no problem. I think I'm the only one on the call, so who is not a consultant. I'm with GMD Development. We're an owner, operator, developer of affordable housing in the city. We have 4 buildings and an additional under construction. They're all very large, 150 plus unit, 7-story. The most recent one was placed in service in the oldest one was placed in service in 2018. And so it's a very new portfolio. I guess I'm happy to hear that O'Brien 360 also has questions, because I've sat in on a couple of these learn about the BEPS, whatever it's called, program. And what I don't understand is, and this is what I hope you guys will touch on, and I'll probably leave and just watch the recording, but I'm pretty sophisticated, and I am not able to assess anywhere what my building that was placed in service in 2018, like under the energy, I mean, all of the ones under that energy code. We have one building in Renton and our new one under construction and a new energy code, but the same are all basically the same design and the same energy use and the same sort of, MEP approach. So it's a little frustrating for me that, like, I feel pretty sophisticated, and yet I've not been able to figure out at all what we're going to have to do to our buildings. And so I was coming on the phone on this call to say, hey, are we just triggering that, like, every owner in the city is going to be hiring O'Brien 360 to do all of this work for us? And also the other question I had flagged was the timing of the grant. I was reading about it the other day. Seems like a very strange timeline if we're having the Learn at Lunch for affordable housing in mid-June, but the grants are due in July with the scope of work required. So, like, I would love to hear more about what your real expectations are for people to apply for funding when the education process has only just begun. I mean, I've sat in on calls previously for the industry, but again, like, if our consultants aren't really feeling up to speed yet, I would love some explanation on, or just, help us understand what your goals are for the timeline of that grant program, because it seems pretty critical. Most of those new affordable housing buildings in Seattle are operating at a loss right now. So if we're triggering work to be done, there just needs to be a lot of discussion around that. And I get that this is probably not the place to talk about that, but it's going to get carried into further conversations. And so just understanding that piece of the puzzle, I think, in this conversation and in others, would be super helpful for the affordable housing community.
Great, thank you, Emily.
Yeah.
To your first question, we will be focusing our content today on the Seattle Building Emissions Performance Standards specifically, and we'll give an overview there, right? We'll also be talking about the Navigator program, which is a tailored coaching program which is specifically designed to help take you through the steps of compliance. So that is I encourage you to consider participating in that, and we'll talk more about it in a moment here. But really the idea there is that the city has put together this program to really take people through the paces of compliance for both the city and the state standards and breaking it down step by step for you. So it sounds like that could be a real
is the
good
expectation
fit for you.
when this was all designed, was the expectation that owners could do it themselves, or is the expectation that ultimately we're going to have to hire a consultant?
Well, I think that the expectation is that buildings can do it themselves, and there are lots of resources to support you doing that, whether that's hiring your own consultants or building the capacity internally. So we'll talk a little bit more about the law in a moment, but I want to make sure we have a chance for our last person to introduce themselves who's joined this call. Is it Kyler?
Hi, yes, Kyler. I'm with HDC, so I work with Laura, and just was wanting to listen in because I end up working with our Dawn team a lot.
Great. Will you tell everyone what the Dawn team is, please?
Yeah, Dawn is the Decarbonize Affordable Housing Now is the acronym, and working to on projects like BEPS to help buildings decarbonize and create a toolkit on what that pathway looks like.
Great, thank you. All right, so then for everyone that's going to be listening to this recording, we're going to kind of set the stage for the why here before we dig into the details of BEPS and the Navigator program offerings. So we like to begin with the why to kind of level set. Both the state standard and the city standard are really addressing carbon and emissions from buildings, and that is the why behind the two building performance standards at the state level and the cities at the city level. So buildings are one of the largest and fastest growing sources of greenhouse gas emissions in Seattle. Buildings contribute more than 1/3 of emissions. So by lowering emissions from buildings, we are significantly lowering carbon overall. So it's a real opportunity for both the city and the state to address carbon and to get to their carbon goals at the city and state levels. The way the city and state are doing that is through adopting building performance standards. And these are tools used to reduce emissions and to reduce energy. So building performance standard, or BPS, requires existing buildings to meet either carbon emissions targets or energy performance targets by a specific deadline. And these building performance standards have been adopted across the US. Seattle is the 13th city, state, or county to adopt a building performance standard. And they're very useful tools in driving improvements in buildings and existing buildings, including lowering emissions and reducing energy consumption. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Amy Fowler to talk more about BEPS.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the Building Emissions Performance Standard today. It is out for public comment right now, the draft rule, so I'm not going into a lot of detail, and I'm not going to be able to answer detailed questions, but I'm just going to give you an idea of what's in there, and then we'll talk a little bit more. So the next slide, please, Sada. Thank you. So here's a slide that tells us how much of the pollution, of climate pollution from buildings is coming from the different types of buildings that are regulated by BEPS. And you can see that the multifamily buildings are about just under 1/4 of the climate pollution that is multifamily buildings. Buildings that are covered by BEPS. So, most of the pollution is coming from the non-residential buildings, but those multifamily buildings are, just about 1/4 of the emissions, and they are included in BEPS for that reason. Next slide, please. So the policy was built out with a very long runway, and that's because when you are potentially required to make changes to your building, that takes a lot of time. But we need to be taking action at this critical juncture. We have an alignment with the state's clean energy law that's already underway, and so we try to align the deadlines and the target dates with the targets in the state's law, and we aligned our building sizes with those in the state law. Since Seattle's law passed in December 2023, we've been developing the new rule. The final rule was published last week. There is a 3-week public comment period. But leading up to that were multitudes of stakeholder meetings after the law was signed, trying to get input on that draft rule. And then before the rule was finally developed and before the legislation was signed in December, there were 3 years of engagement on getting that legislation to a point where the city council would adopt it and the mayor would sign it. So you see on this timeline, we're in that first vertical box there. We've got our draft rule. The first compliance cycle starts in 2027, and that doesn't include meeting any greenhouse gas intensity targets. It's focused on the benchmarking that all of the covered buildings have been doing to date and verifying those benchmarking emissions. And then having a report on the building's baseline state, outlining the future needs. What is the building owner going to need to do to meet that future emission performance standard down the road? And this is so we can ensure that folks are well aware of the policy and expectations and are able to plan for the future and what's needed as part of their long-term asset management processes. Then in 2031 to 2035 is when the cycle of targets the first cycle when targets need to be met. There are extensions for affordable multifamily housing. If they want to defer meeting that first round of targets, they can start with meeting the second round of targets for affordable housing. The 2041 to 2045 cycle is when non-residential buildings are expected to be achieving net zero, and multifamily buildings are required to achieve net zero in the following cycle. Next slide. And then meet those decreasing targets. Sorry, got something in my throat. Basic framework of the policy is verifying energy performance, evaluating your building's baseline conditions, such as what's going on with your heating and cooling, identifying what needs to be done to achieve your greenhouse gas targets, meeting those decreasing targets every 5 years until you finally achieve zero emissions. The performance standard is going to supersede the building tune-ups mandate. I don't believe that your multifamily buildings are doing building tune-ups, but for those buildings that are, this supersedes that. And it'll be sunsetting once the current cycle is complete. There are multiple pathways to compliance. The law was built to be flexible in response to feedback from building owners. It's a complex legislation. It is a complex rule. I won't begin to try and tell you what those multiple pathways are and what they mean in this short presentation, but I will encourage you to listen carefully in the next section about the navigator, because that's where all will be revealed. Next slide. So you can look here in the first column and see what size is your building or are your buildings if you have a portfolio. Again, that first compliance column from 2027, 2030, that's when you've got to verify your previous year's energy and emissions data, that benchmarking data, to confirm the accuracy and reporting requirements. We want you to be developing that plan. If you're not already below your target, then get ready to start implementing actions that will help you meet those 2031 to 2035 targets. Work in the building would need to be complete. For example, if you are a 2031 greenhouse gas target building, you're one of the largest buildings, then that work would need to be complete by the end of 2030 or sooner, so that the reductions are in place and they show up in the building's greenhouse gas emission inventory and in greenhouse gas emissions intensity. Each subsequent interval, buildings are required to meet progressively lower emissions targets. Go to the next slide. The multifamily, BEPS has a multifamily prescription path that allows multifamily buildings to take advantage of, instead of meeting a greenhouse gas emissions intensity target, choosing to take a prescriptive method rather than having to do the calculations and understand what's going on in their building and doing the numbers. You can just replace all of the things that are using fossil fuel. You can use that prescriptive path for one compliance period. There's two options. One's around water heating and one is around space heating. Next slide is amenities.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in.
Oops, sorry.
On the prescriptive path, I couldn't find the unmute.
Of course, Lada.
Just something to point out, and this is something that we dig into more if you do join the Navigator coaching program, but you can also stagger these. So you can choose to replace one system first to then apply for that, to extend your deadline for meeting the target, and then you can do the other system next if you want to buy yourself more time. So there's the opportunity to stagger those to create more space and time to do what you need to do to get your buildings into compliance.
Thanks, Sada. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So now that you've kind of heard the overview of BEPS and the law, we are going to do a quick Menti here. So we use the Mentimeter tool in our virtual workshops. It is an anonymous polling tool. Tara has just put the link in the chat there, and I'm going to bring up the screen over here. You can also grab the QR code here to answer the questions on your phone. And we have two questions here for you, which is not that one because we did that one in person. Here we go. Same instructions, same link. So of the different areas of BEPS, which areas do you think multifamilies need the most support and help with? So there is, of course, just awareness of the law and education, calculating and meeting targets, the greenhouse gas reporting and planning. Then there's learning about where building emissions come from, then reducing those emissions, or funding and staff time. So if you would just
I am literally the only person I think who owns buildings on this. So I can just tell you, I mean, just continuing to do education awareness, but also give more examples around a newer average building in Seattle, sort of what, you know, what are, how might that come back? Give us, and then helping us understand what funding is being developed at the city and state level to help us accommodate.
great.
Because these buildings will not be producing any cash by 2027 or by 2031. So, and what also is the penalty for not complying?
Okay. We're
So
not going to get probably the penalties today, but we certainly can send you that information. Today we're kind of just level setting on the overall
that's fine.
law.
I was just trying to give you feedback of like,
Yeah.
what are people's questions going to be, since I am the
Yeah.
only person on the phone. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. That's helpful. All right. Well, I'm just gonna skip here. So I was going to go back to our slides. Well, I think this would be helpful. I think Emily, I'm hearing the primary concern, but are there any others that are specific to emissions reduction, kind of what would need to be implemented in buildings? What are some concerns around implementing projects in buildings to get to that emissions reduction?
can you be more specific?
Okay, so let's say you're considering replacing either water heating or HVAC system. What are some of your concerns in planning for that replacement and those upgrades?
I think everyone's concern is just going to be who's going to pay for it. We're all
Mhm.
development companies that have sophisticated development staff on site. We build these buildings, we design them, we hire the consultants. I think the project management capabilities and the understanding how to do design and work with consultants on designing and getting the work done in our buildings. A lot of us do renovations regularly. So none of those things are the concern. I think it's just understanding how we're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And many of us have buildings that have, I would say that probably our biggest issue is going to be the hot water heating, because until the current round of energy code, we're all water heating. Many of these new buildings are water heating with gas, hot water.
Right. All right. Thank you. And Kelly?
I was just gonna, of course, cost is a thing, and then tied to the beyond just the upgrade itself. I was curious if electrical service upgrades are going to be a part of that as well for these buildings, and the coordination.
Ooh,
Everything's
great
about
question.
money, right?
Great question, Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and that is very specific to the building, but I know that that is something that both the Office of Sustainability and Environment and Seattle City Light are very closely watching, right, and keeping track of. And a big part of that is right sizing your equipment. And so through the Navigator program, we talk a lot about that, about how do you achieve energy efficiency so that you're freeing up load to then right size the equipment that you're buying, and to address that concern about the electrification and load. So yes, great question, and definitely something we talk about in the Navigator program a lot. All right, well, to the question of funding.
Can I ask something before we move on from
Yes, please.
I know that commercial gas cooking is an end use deduction.
Correct.
And it included residential appliances, but from my reading, the residential gas cooking is not an end use deduction. Is that correct?
I don't think that is correct. So go ahead, Amy.
It's a deduction in condominiums,
Right.
not in I think it's a short-term deduction in multifamily housing
Multifamily,
and
right.
non-condominium.
And
But
is
I
the
would need to
worksheet
check it.
available? Oh, okay. Is the worksheet still pending to help estimate those deductions for
Yes.
cooking? I couldn't
I'm
find.
working on that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Those were my two big questions. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Amy, I'll let you talk about the grant opportunity.
You bet. All right, so we were fortunate to have funding included in the 2025 budget. We've got roughly $4 million available in the budget, and those funds can be used for engineering design and or building retrofits to reduce emissions to help buildings get ready for those BEPS targets. We announced the grant in about mid-April, and we're accepting applications through July 10th. The priority for that is affordable housing and nonprofit buildings. Last year, we were able to award grants of about $4.5 million, largely to affordable housing, helped about 800 units of affordable housing, and another property that was senior housing, didn't technically qualify as affordable housing, but it was senior housing. So we do have the grant open until July 10th. It does not require a detailed scope of work. That will be required more detail when a grantee is selected. There is a worksheet on our website that has the entire application, converted to a worksheet so that the applicants can fill that out, gather the information that they need, and then copy paste into the online application. It's relatively straightforward. Having been a grant applicant myself in the past for years, I tried to put myself back in that position and keep this as simple as possible and ask for as little as possible. We want details when we know someone is receiving the grant, because we don't want someone to put a lot of effort in until they know they're getting the grant. So it's asking for information about your building, about what kind of project you're planning to do, your state of readiness to undertake this project, and things about where your building is located within Seattle, and things about your neighborhood. So please do take a look at that worksheet. If you have questions, please feel free to email me. And there's also assistance available. The Puget Sound Clean Air Agency has a program where they provide assistance to nonprofits that are applying for grants. They're assisting 3 applicants right now. I don't know if they'll have the capacity to assist more, because those were lined up earlier. They might not be able to in the time that's left. But if you're interested in that, you can look at the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency's website. They're our local clean air agency authority for King, Kitsap, Pearson, Snohomish counties. So give them a check out. And yeah, send me an email if you have questions about the grant. We purposely kept it open for 3 months, trying to have a long window for folks to understand their project and do their research and figure out what they could do.
Thank you, Amy.
Slide. Mm-hmm.
Emily, looks like, do you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick question, Amy. Do you anticipate that this is funding that will be available in the future as well, or is it going to be on a year-by-year basis with the city council?
It was recommended that it be an annual amount by the Green New Deal Oversight Board, and they make funding recommendations every year to the city council and the mayor. The amount of $4.5 million was included for next year's, the 2026 endorsed budget. As I'm sure you've heard, the city is in a tight budget situation, so I can't say.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't
Yeah,
say what
obviously
will be
you
in
don't
the
have a crystal
budget.
ball, but it was recommended that this be an annual thing. That's fantastic. And then second question for you, of the couple of applications that you funded last year and that you're reviewing this year, were any of those, because I did look at the application, I can appreciate, I appreciate how relatively straightforward it is. But the question of sort of like, what is the project and how do you get to the scope for the ones that you funded last year and the ones that are under review this year, are any of those sort of entirely driven by staff at the organization, or did those organizations engage consultants to help do the analysis of what is required for their buildings?
So if they're doing the projects are engineering design and or building retrofits to reduce emissions. So they all have consultants involved. None of the building owners have an engineer on staff that would be able to do the design of the systems that would be necessary if they have to retrofit their buildings.
Were these
Yeah,
part of larger renovations, or were these like standalone sort of in response to the building decarbonization program and requirements?
it was a mix. Some had aging equipment that they knew they were going to be on the verge of
Okay.
replacing. So like,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Amy. Well, now we're going to dig more into the Building Emissions Navigator coaching program. So here are the objectives for the program. And the program is really designed to help buildings understand the state and city building performance standards with an emphasis on Seattle BEPS. The program will help you identify energy and emissions reduction opportunities in your building. We support development of the required documents for both laws. We provide templates and tools for pulling together that documentation and ensuring you have what you need to comply with the documentation requirements. We also support understanding and calculating your estimated performance targets for both laws. For Seattle, that'll be the emissions target, and for the Washington law, that is the energy target. And then finally, we help support getting you connected to different funding opportunities and incentives available locally and at the state level. This year, we are offering several group training opportunities. We call these group trainings cohorts. We have a dedicated cohort for multifamily buildings. There is a cohort kicking off in the fall in September. We also have in-person and virtual. So the multifamily dedicated cohort is a virtual cohort. There will also be an in-person cohort in October, and that is a mix of multifamily and non-residential buildings. The in-person training is 1.5 days and includes all of the same benefits and content of the virtual, just in a condensed time period. Cohort graduates, so once you've gone through either that virtual or in-person training, cohort graduates have the opportunity to join monthly drop-in hours. Those are opportunities to dig deeper on specific topics related to your building. It's an opportunity for the energy and climate coaches to share updates about the 2 laws. And then we also offer emissions reduction planning, and that planning support is available to a subset of cohort graduates that need the most help. And we have program criteria that we use to help evaluate which buildings need the most support to reduce emissions and start to plan that those project implementation. And then finally, there are online resources. The program has a program website. We'll share that link with you all where you can find information on both the city and state laws. From the program's inception 3 years ago, we have focused the program design and delivery on priority audiences. And we want to ensure that these priority audiences continue to participate in the program and know that this is a resource available to them. So our priority audiences include nonprofit owned and operated buildings, buildings that are owned or operated by Black, Indigenous, or people of color, and other buildings serving frontline communities, and then subsidized and unsubsidized low-income multifamily housing. So please spread the word to your colleagues and clients. If their building meets one of these descriptions, please let them know about the Navigator program and that this free technical support and training is available to them. So a little bit more about the group training offering. So we like this cohort model a lot. We've used it in strategic energy management, and here are some of the perks of this approach. So it is free to participate in the group training. We do ask for a commitment of your time. So we know your time is valuable, and that commitment up front is something that we ask you to consider. And we will support you and put as much time in as you do. So you will receive tailored coaching through the program. This includes technical support from our team of engineers. We have a deep bench of subcontractors as well. So we work with a range of engineers in the region, including Ecotope, which I know is active in the Housing Development Consortium. We connect you directly with the utility and city resources. So when you are part of a cohort, you get paired with an energy management analyst from Seattle City Light, and they can help you understand what rebates and programs and incentives are available to help you implement projects at your building. And then finally, you receive a building walkthrough to identify emissions and energy reduction opportunities. Here's a little more information on the emissions reduction planning. So as I said, a subset of cohort participants are selected to receive this support. Ecotope is our partner that supports this work, and the emissions planning includes an engineer-led site visit. So it's an in-person site visit to identify energy reduction and emissions reduction opportunities in the building. And then you receive an action-oriented report that outlines what can be implemented and kind of gives you those suggestions for timing on when and how that will support your compliance with BEPS. And that is then followed up with an hour-long coaching call with the engineer that did the site walkthrough to walk through any questions the building might have about the report and project implementation. So I'll pause there on the elements of the program. Any questions on the Navigator support that's available?
Not from me.
Hey, Sada, this is Laura. I'm just gonna throw it out there that if the cohort group ends up working with an affordable housing project, it would be really awesome if we could use it as a case study, kind of going back to Emily's point of what does the building look like? How did they, do the walkthrough? What did they determine was necessary, based on the age of the building and the equipment, et cetera. So I guess as these projects are evaluated, the Dawn Group would be really interested in developing sort of a case study library of what the learnings are so that property owners with various different situations would have that available.
Absolutely. I would love to coordinate with you on that. We are actually going to be working on some case studies this year based on the group of participants we had in the spring. So let's be in touch and see how Housing Development Consortium could support on that and get the word out and make sure your members know about it. Yeah, excellent.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So just a little bit more here about the Navigator program. Over the last 3 years, over 40 Seattle organizations have participated in the Building Emissions Navigator program. Here's an example of just some of the organizations, the types of organizations that have participated, as well as the range across the city of Seattle. So we've touched a lot of buildings across the city, and you can see there's some pockets there that need some more attention. So again, I'll make that appeal. Please spread the word to your colleagues and members if they are looking for support on compliance to check out the Building Emissions Navigator program. And just to share an experience from one of our past participants. So Veronica Gallardo is the property manager at El Centro de la Raza. And this is what she had to say about the program. The accelerator, formerly the accelerator, the Navigator now, made it easier to complete the tasks due, as well as helped me to teach and explain to our board of directors, leadership, participants, and staff what we are doing, how we are doing it, and why we are doing it. And I think that the what and the how and the why there is really important. And I think as Emily has articulated and many other past building owners and operators, both the city and state performance standards mean significant changes for your buildings, how you operate your buildings. And so creating that buy-in early on and being able to tell that story to create the buy-in, get the resources you need, find the support that you need, whether internally or externally, is really important. And the Navigator coaching program can help you do that. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Graham to introduce the Strategic Energy Management Program.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Graham Goodman. Glad to be here with you today. I have a few talking points, but I also want to be cognizant of some of the comments and little bits and pieces that you guys have shared with us as well. But yeah, I'm here to talk about strategic energy management, or SEM or SEM. It's all kind of interchangeable. But I realized this morning when I was reviewing the slides that I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to plug some of the rest of our portfolio. So City Light has roughly 30 customer facing energy programs. So there's no way that I could share with you all of those. But I would basically say that if you're thinking about electricity, we can probably help pay for it. So if it's lighting, or what we would call non-lighting, which would be things like your HVAC, your water heating, your envelope, and so on, we can help pay for that. I heard Emily, you talking about new construction, or maybe Kelly was talking about new construction. We can help pay for that. I would say if you have new construction in your pipeline, come to us early and often, and we can help work with you on that. I also heard Emily talking about properties in Renton. And so I would also say City Light distributes electricity in Renton as well. We are not just contained to the city of Seattle, so we can work with you there. I would also say, like, if you're looking for other types of support, and maybe those properties don't need BEPS support, but you still want clean building support. We partner with PSE on a ton of programs, including their Clean Building Accelerator program, for our shared customers in the franchise cities. So tons of opportunities for us to work with you. Outside of energy efficiency, we also have like EV charging, solar, tons of different opportunities for you to participate with us. Even O&M. So, one of the things that you'll learn about more if you join the Building Emission Navigator is how to put together your O&M and energy management plans for the Clean Building Performance Standards. We can actually probably help pay for some of your O&M measures that you might implement. So, yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email address will be at the end of the slides for those of you on the call with us today, and those of you who are going to watch the recording. So if you have any questions, please reach out and I'll get you connected with the right people in the utility for whatever different type of project it is that you're working on. So one thing I also wanted to touch on was I've heard, Emily, I think you've mentioned multiple times like the use of consultants in all of this. And I will say, when you're putting together your energy management teams for the Navigator program or strategic energy management, should you decide that these are good programs for you, your consultants can be part of your energy management team. I would highly recommend it if you're working with consultants already, whether it's your controls people or your design people. Bring them to the table. We want them to be a part of the conversation too. So that's a bit about like where we're at today. One more thing. I do know we have a huge limited time offer that just got made public today. Was the first communication I've seen about it for lighting, and that goes live from July to September. I don't know the details about it because I don't work on lighting programs, but massive. Keep your eyes open for that. I'm sure it's on our website as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what is strategic energy management? That is what I'm here to talk to you about today. So you may have heard more about this program. SADA's done a really good job of kind of alluding to it, and it does integrate a lot of the same practices and principles that we talk about in the Navigator program. And you may be familiar with it more so for commercial or industrial customers. But City Light is rolling out a multifamily program with our target date, I think I mentioned earlier, of Q1 2026. So I want to start spreading that word. We want to get some people enthusiastic about it. And we want to start just spreading awareness that this program is coming. What is SEM? So basically, strategic energy management, SEM, takes an iterative approach at continuous improvement in your energy management. It's very similar to the Navigator program, but goes a bit deeper. If you think of the Navigator kind of as like your energy management 101, this would go much deeper into like a 202 or 303 kind of setting for your energy management training. So very similar kind of approach, but a few differences. So one thing that's different between the two is while the Navigator's primary focus is helping you navigate through your compliance pathways for building performance standards, SEM will help you with that, but it will have the primary focus of helping you with your own facility energy management. So that could be energy efficiency, or it could be the other things that I talked about. It could be helping you be ready to participate in other programs that we have at the utility, or ones that don't even exist yet, like time of use or demand response, things like that. and helping you build the organizational practices and institutional frameworks that support it. So it includes like making your commitment, making an energy policy, creating your energy management plans, looking at your plans with actionable items within it, and helping hold your hand through that process, evaluating your progress, setting milestones, things like that, and rewarding you along the way. So another thing that's different about the Navigator and SEM is that we will actually pay you to participate in it. Like the Navigator, it's free, but we'll pay you performance-based incentives. So if you reduce your electricity, we'll pay you for that. We intend for the multifamily audience to also build in milestone-based incentives to the program. There's still details to be fleshed out on that, but things like having your energy team that meets on a regular cadence, maybe having your executive sponsor attend those meetings, things like that. We want to reward you along the way. And so there will be kind of a hybrid approach about how we incentivize you to participate in this program. But yeah, we want to help integrate best practices into your daily operations, as well as looking at the long-term horizons. And we want to help build persistent savings and persistent best practices into your program. So how do we do that? Right here. This is basically the approach that we would take. So over the course of 24 months, so much longer, deeper dive than what the Navigator provides, through 24 months, we will be putting together a cohort-based model that will give you those organizational commitments to energy management from the top down with your executive sponsorship, integrating those goals and actionable living roadmap. It will be group based, but you'll also receive much more in-depth direct one-on-one coaching, training, energy scans in person. And so that's pretty exciting. I will say, like, we've done a little bit of in-person stuff over the past few months with the Navigator program, and it is just so awesome to be out there with customers doing this stuff in person as opposed to what we've been doing the past few years virtually. So that's one thing I'm really looking forward to about SEM, is that there will be an in-person element to it. So that's great. And yeah, so like I said before, just helping you tracking your energy performance, setting goals along the way, and rewarding and recognizing you as you go. Yeah, I think I've touched on many of the things that I wanted to. Again, we're still fleshing out some of these details, but as I've alluded to in the comments or in the chat here, this is a good opportunity for us to get some feedback from you, since we have not finalized all of our program design and elements. So if you have things that are really critical to you, I want to take this opportunity to get some feedback about what would motivate you to participate in a program. And so we actually have another Minty coming up. I think I see a
Yeah.
question. Yes.
Laura, go ahead.
I guess the piece that I'm missing from what you've shared, this is really awesome to hear about. What is the time commitment, and are there expectations of expenditures being made in order to continue on the program? So,
Yeah. Good questions. So what I can say from a high level is it is free to participate, like the Navigator program. We are the primary driver behind SEM is low and no cost, like behavior and activity change. So we're not necessarily requiring you to do capital improvements. But I will say, one of the beautiful things about this type of program, both for the participant and the utility, is that typically we get into your facility, we look at, what your opportunities are, and we start to identify capital opportunities. So we can develop this long-term sort of capital roadmap that might help you reduce both your greenhouse gas emissions and your energy intensity. So although we are looking for you to identify and start to implement best practices in your O&M. We are helping with both the short-term, like easy, low-hanging fruit, as well as the long-term capital stuff. And in terms of the time commitment, that's a good question. So I don't think we've totally finalized that. Sada might have this fresher in her mind than I do, about like some of the specifics that we have detailed so far.
Yeah, so it's a minimum 2-year commitment, and with the option for additional years. So typically we see the most savings for a building come in years 2 and 3. So we really encourage folks to make that longer term commitment to the full 2 to 3 years, so that they can really see the fruits of their labor, right, and see that savings come through.
I think what she might be getting at is like, what is the monthly commitment or weekly
Oh,
commitment? Like, how often are we? What's the touch point look like? I
touch
think
points
that's how
are
I hear the question.
quarterly workshops. So our workshops are typically 2 hours and they're virtual. Although we're trying to figure out how to do in person. So TBD to we'll see what we can figure out there. To Graham's point, the in-person is such a great opportunity. And then monthly coaching calls. So but those monthly coaching calls really flex to the needs of the participants. So if the participant needs an hour-long monthly coaching call, we're there for it. If it just needs to be like a 30-minute check-in, that is also. So we really do flex to what makes the most sense for the building and the participants and the team.
Yeah, if you're going on vacation in July because you got sweet plans to go to an Alaska cruise or something like that, like that's okay. We can skip a monthly meeting or we can shift it around. It's not going to be set in stone that you have to be here at a certain place and time for those coaching calls. We'll work with you on that.
Emily, do you have a question?
Yeah, mostly I just had a comment for you, Graham, as you're rolling this out and trying to connect with affordable housing. The best relationship sort of epicenter between affordable housing and Seattle City Light over the last 5 years or more, really, actually, because it was pre-COVID at this point. Ugh, old. It was Ray Ramos, because he was our priority 2 connection point. He's sort of been MIA the last year. I don't know whether he retired or exactly what happened there, but like whoever is going to be the new Ray Ramos, unless he's going to sort of revive his role and be our priority 2 contact, that's really a person that you should connect with around this, because that is the person that we go to for all Seattle City Light design, permitting, engineering. Like that's our first and strongest touch point. So
I don't know that name. Is that a City Light employee? I
yeah.
don't know that name.
So
I see him in my Outlook though.
yeah, he's yeah, it was, who was it before? I want to say it was it Richard Ohashi? No, yeah, he was SCL. He retired for sure. But it's been Ray since Richard. So
Okay. I've only been here 3 years, so I don't
and there
necessarily
might be a new
yeah.
point. We've struggled actually a little bit recently on this particular topic, but theoretically, Seattle City Light has a priority 2 person who is our conduit for affordable housing design and permitting issues. And
Okay.
so I haven't been working. We have a project under construction, so it hasn't really been an issue, but that is typically the person that affordable housing is connecting with most regularly.
Okay.
And building a relationship with. So
Great. Sato, I'm feeling like we probably don't have time for a Minty right now.
I was just going to say we don't, and I'm going to pivot to a very short survey that I'll send Laura, and maybe Laura, we can coordinate on getting a 3-question survey out to your members that would provide some input. Okay, great. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for your feedback. We're going to start shifting gears here to wrap things up, but I do want to just see if there's any other last questions about either the Navigator, Strategic Energy Management, or Seattle BEPS itself.
It's not really a question. I guess a comment that I have is aligning how projects are set up in Energy Star Portfolio Manager in terms of like property types and gross floor area, and making sure that it checks the boxes for Clean Building Performance Standard and BEPS. That's where I'm currently navigating right now with some projects.
Yeah, the OSC and City Light both have benchmarking support. They have awesome resources. So I would first direct you to the OSC benchmarking team to ensure that your Energy Star portfolio manager is correctly set up for BEPS and continued benchmarking. And then we can also get you connected with resources to ensure that the setup for clean buildings is also correct. The Navigator is also a great resource. I think, Kelly, because you're on the consulting side, what I would say is if you have buildings that you're working with that you think are a good fit for compliance support and would be a good fit for the Navigator coaching program, let them know about this, and then you can join the Navigator as part of their team. So we don't typically let consultants just join by themselves, but if you are supporting a building that is enrolled in the program, then it's awesome to have you as part of the team because you have added expertise and knowledge about their systems that can help them along the way.
Okay.
All right. Well, wrapping up here, I did want to make a plug for a funding opportunity available. If you are not aware of the Washington Clean Buildings Tier 2 Early Adopter Incentive Program, it is a great funding opportunity. So the Department of Commerce released a guidebook end of last year with details on this funding opportunity. There's $150 million available. The basic incentive is 30 cents per square feet, and funding is going to be available starting July 1st. And I highly encourage you to check out this funding because the barrier to entry for this funding is very low. You have to be a Tier 2 covered building, so multifamily building larger than 20,000 square feet. You need to be served by a participating utility, which City Light is a participating utility, so check that box. And then you have to meet the Tier 2 requirements, which includes benchmarking, check. You're in the city of Seattle, you've been benchmarking. And then implementing your operations and maintenance program and creating your energy management plan. So those two documentation pieces are required. And if you do those, then this is a great funding opportunity. Highly recommend you check it out. There's also an enhanced incentive, which you can find out more details on, but I just want to highlight that multifamily affordable housing is eligible for the enhanced incentive. And wrapping up here, as I've said before, please spread the word about both the Navigator and the decarbonization grant. The QR codes here will take you to additional information. We have an information session coming up specific to the Navigator program where you can learn more about the program and how it can support you on your path to compliance. And then for the decarbonization grant, that deadline is July 10th. So if you're considering applying, please do jump at that opportunity to see if you can get support for design and implementation of decarbonization in your building. If you're interested in SCM, we'll send a contact sign up for folks to learn more. And then we'll also share some additional resources as follow-up. Laura.
Thanks. I just wanted to quickly make a plug for our next session in this series, which is July 17th. And that session will specifically have people from the Department of Commerce talking about the Clean Building Performance Standard and all of those resources that you just mentioned. So that just sort of was a great lead up to our next session. And that session will also be an hour and a half long because we're going to formally start talking about the DAWN program, our Decarbonize Affordable Housing Now program from HDC, where we are really actively engaging with you all in order to develop tools that will connect you with all of these different programs in a more in an efficient way, hopefully, that doesn't require you to have a running list of links on your queue. So we'll keep plugging away with all of these different teams, but July 17th is our next session. Thank you, Sada.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's a wrap for us. We'll send along some helpful resources that Laura will help us make sure that the Housing Development Consortium can access. We'll share these slides and all the links that we've included in today's presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
folks.
it.
It was nice chatting with you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
feedback. Appreciate it.